Welcome everybody here in the room and online. This is the first edition of a new program, new series that we want to start, visual storytelling. What is it? We will explore it. We don't pretend that we know all about it, but we have lots of great people coming in this tonight's edition, but also in the future editions. And next-gen storytelling, visual storytelling, as one of our guests calls it. We have tonight Eefje Blankevoort here with us, Kadir van Lohuizen, and online we have Whitney Johnson, who has the longest job title, Vice President Visual and Immersive Experiences at National Geographic. She's from Washington, D.C. via Zoom. Good afternoon, I think, Whitney. Yes. My name is Lars Boering. Why do I do this? Because I am fascinated by visual storytelling. For a long time, I've been involved in photography. I've been working for World Press Photo, and currently I'm the director of the European Journalism Center, where we support, develop, and strengthen journalism. But for me, it's not about the photo anymore, it's about visuals. And I think that the world is also about visuals. That doesn't mean we rule out photography, of course, but it is part of it. Today's image maker doesn't feel restricted by the limits of his, her, or their medium. The maker is a maker. Yeah, maker, we call it. We're going to talk about it today. How do we call it? A photographer that is making film. The filmmaker is making a podcast. The writer is a vlogger or a video maker. And while most makers were trapped into their disciplines, new generations break free of that, and they know better ways to tell their stories in different ways with many new techniques. But what unites them, their work often has social impact, and they engage also in visual storytelling. The story determines the medium. In this series, we'll just investigate this expanding universe of visual storytelling, and we'll have the makers tell their most beautiful, impactful stories, and also show how they work. An evening about the creative process, but also about entrepreneurship. I always think about entrepreneurship. It's an important part of it. We'll talk about it a little bit more. It will be in two parts. The first hour we will have with the people here in the room, but also with the people at home. And then at the end of this first hour, we will say goodbye to the people online. And we will continue for half an hour here as well and exchange some more. If you have any questions, then you can share them with us. Go to menti.com. It's on the screen, and the code is also there. Don't try it as a phone number, because I don't know where you end up, but it's 87542035. I will get them here on my iPad and take a look at them. So let me welcome Eefje, Kadir, and Whitney. Both of you in the audience will give a presentation. Yeah, I'd like to invite you to the stage. Eefje Blankevoort and Kadir van Lohuizen. I will start with you, Eefje. Do you see yourself as what we here call a maker?
Yes.
Yes. Why? I mean, a maker, it's kind of it's like a container, but yeah.
Well, I tell stories in very different forms, I think. So indeed, the story it comes first, and then you find the right medium or media. Yeah. Can be different things.
Yeah. So you make stories and you use different forms.
Yeah.
Kadir, do you also call yourself a maker?
Nowadays I do. Well, maybe I always did, but yeah, I very much came from photography, but that has expanded quite a lot over the last decade, I would say.
Yeah. Do you? It's not a very beautiful word, maker. Right? Photographer, photojournalist, that is much nicer, but maker is a little bit, yeah, maker.
Well, they all erode a bit, but no, yeah, but it kind of qualifies for what I do and what Eefje does.
Right.
I don't call myself maker. I call myself journalist and documentary maker in the broader sense of the word.
Yeah. Whitney, do you use the word maker, or do you use other wording at National Geographic with all the people you work with?
That's a good question. I think we've sort of tried to expand. We definitely have expanded more to like visual storyteller, maybe is the term of choice these days at National Geographic. Storyteller versus maker, but maker has a very sort of modern implication too, and I think it's interesting in the tech world as well.
Okay, we'll get back to that. We will start with the presentation of Eefje about the wonderful project that you will show to us, Shadow Game. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, very shortly about me and our production company Prospector. We're a journalism agency based in Amsterdam. We work transmedia, so to say. So indeed, first there's an idea, there's an obsession, there's something we want to find out, and then we find the right form. And we is Arnold van Brugge, my colleague, and Laura Verduin, our project manager and director. But we've started out actually working like that. So just going into the world with our notebooks, writing articles. But then also writing books. The Sochi project, maybe people know that. I spent a lot of time in Iran, wrote a book about that. But then films followed. I mean, some stories we felt it doesn't work for a book or an article, so we also started making films. Interactives, that's what we do, is interactive storytelling online. Exhibitions became part of it. We work a lot with photographers. For example, this one is with Anouk Steketee. I see two of my great companions in the audience, Dana Lixenberg and Anaïs Lopez. We work with them a lot. We make podcast series, like The Plantation of Our Ancestors. Cassie Weile is also one of our series we did, and often it's multimedia and it's multi-platform, so it's different ways of storytelling. But tonight I'll talk about Shadow Game as our latest project. Yeah, it's a lot. I'll tell you about it. So it's really a transmedia project. There's a feature-length film, 90 minutes film, but there's also follow-up short documentaries. There's a photography project that we do together with Sidem Yüksel, an investigative journalism project, an adventure game that's still in development. There's a lot of education programs around it, and I mean, it's a project that evolves all the time. So actually in April, 13th of April, you're all invited. We are launching the EP, so the music album of Shadow Game that we made together with a rapper. I didn't really think about that 4 years ago, but it sort of happened. And its impact, it's a huge impact campaign. I'll get to that later. So I think it's good to tell you a little bit about the film. It's a mosaic story about kids, teenagers trying to find protection in Europe, but they are met with a lot of hostility. It's a mosaic film, so you follow 9 characters, which is a lot, but we wanted to show that it's not a story of just one child. It happens to many, many underage refugees who come to Europe alone. So I think I'll just share the trailer with you so you get an idea of the film.
Control हो गया सारा शहर.
Attention, attention. I'm warning you that you're at the Hungarian border. If you cross illegally or attempt to cross, it's counted to be a crime in Hungary. I'm warning you to hold back. Warning you to hold back.
أنا وأخوي شيرو هربنا من عفرين، من سوريا عفرين.
والله دارفور هي منطقة صعبة بس اللي خربتها مشاكل والحروبات.
مشكلتي لا أقدر أرجع للعراق يدونه ولا أقدر.
أي كنت مبسوط يعني بسوريا. قذايف صواريخ بأكثر بعد ما بالحرب. أي بس هي الحرب.
You are asking for me. Will you spend your time there? In an area where you will not have peace, where you will not be able to go to doctor, where you will not be able to go to school. When you spend a life there, you will not spend a life there.
Go. It is a mission. If you complete it, you win the game.
Be careful. There are different games. Train game, container game, walking game.
If police catch you, your all game will be destroyed.
But if they don't arrest us, then we will reach to our destiny.
मैंने तकरीबन 17-18 बार.
حتى المرة واحد لو مثلا واحد مشى ورجعه.
أنا يعني انتبهوا علي تقريبا 15 واحد نزلوني.
في الحال يمه. في إيطاليا. ما تبكي ما تبكي.
كنت في أي مكان بعد حاول تمشي.
It's very dangerous. Do or die.
If you pass, so you will win. That's why they called it a game.
So one last thing I want to share about Shadow Game before we have a conversation is that what we wanted to do is really find a new narrative. We didn't want to make another sad refugee story. We wanted to make a portrait of these boys who are, of course, really vulnerable. They're in a really, really horrible situation, but they are also unbelievable powerful. I mean, they are funny. They're kids, they're teenagers with the same dreams and ambitions as the teenagers on our side of the fence. So we really wanted to tell the story in a different way. And for us, it was really important also to do it with them. So it really became a co-creation while shooting the film, while meeting the kids on all these different places on the borders. We found out that they film their journey themselves. Because, you know, as one boy said, people won't believe me if I'll tell them how horrible the journey was. So I need to document my journey. And for example, Eski here, he introduced us to the world of TikTok. And he showed us that even how horrible the journey was. Kids make films and they put a funny music underneath it and they put it on TikTok. And at first we were really surprised and a bit shocked. Like, it's a really, really dangerous journey and people die, kids die. But it's a way to cope with it. And of course, they're also from a really new generation, a true storytelling generation. So they do film everything they encounter themselves. And he started vlogging. I mean, we didn't even ask him, but we said, let's stay in touch. And he just started sending us all these vlogs in which he always starts, hi guys, it's Sajid Khan from Afghanistan. And it's amazing, it's beautiful material. I think by using that, we really do justice to their story. And it brings you so much closer than if you would only use the material that we filmed. So that's as a short introduction.
Thank you, Eefje. A short introduction to a massive story. Stories, I would say. How long have you been working on this now?
More than 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
Do you ever
5 years.
5 years. Yeah. Time flies when you're having a good time and doing wonderful things. Ever had these moments where you felt like, how do we continue, or where does it take us?
No, not really, because it was a journey we did, like, we went with we went with the flow, so to say. I mean, it was a really tough film to make because we went to really horrible situations and we didn't know if the kids would survive, basically. So for a long time, we were really worried that one of them would die. It's a miracle that all of them survived, actually. At the same time, it was a beautiful way of working, you know, working with these kids, working in a very guerrilla-style way. So, I mean, we couldn't research this and then, you know, go back home, write a proposal for 3 months, and then maybe go back. We had to go there, always without a camera first, get to know the situation, find the protagonists, find the boys, you know, see if they would want to work with us, gain the trust, and then we would ask our cameraman to come. So it was like research and film in the moment, and I love doing that.
It's not working. Yeah, you make a concept, but you constantly adjust. So it's a very open way of working on it. But still, you have to at one point define how you're going to visualize it. Whether it's you mentioned a couple things. You are there. You have to make these quick decisions, and because you're also there. Is that a big challenge to go out about it like that?
Well, we knew a few things. I mean, already Elsa and I, my co-director and I, we know quite a lot about this topic. We've been working on it for a few years already. So we knew where to go, sort of. We knew a bit what we would find, but we were shocked every time we went somewhere. And we knew we wanted to tell this story completely from the perspectives of kids, of their perspective. You in the film you won't see an adult. It's only their story. So that was what we knew. And we wanted to tell also the story of their imagination, of their coping mechanisms, how they cope with the journey. And we had all these ideas about it, about visualizing it. And for example, we had this idea when we met a group of Pakistani kids. They told us that every time if they had their battery charged and they had to wait for like the next game, the next moment they would cross the border, they would always watch Bollywood movies. So we came up with this idea like, maybe we should shoot a Bollywood scene with them to sort of visualize how they see also their journey. And Dura told me, because I asked him, what's the Bollywood song that sort of, is your story? And he told me, there's this song, Zindagi Ki Talash, something. And I looked it up, and it was exactly that journey, what they described. So we actually ended up making a Bollywood scene with a Steadicam operator, and it was awesome. I mean, we love doing it with the car, and like they run through the forest, and like the same night in the hotel room, I edited into a scene with this song, and the next day we showed it, and we loved it. And I was like, it's definitely gonna be in the film, and it's not, because it was too constructed.
Yeah.
So then we met actually these kids, Jano, who filmed his whole journey, and when he showed us this, it was like, wow, this is what brings us closer to their stories.
A feature-length documentary, short docs, photography, a game, a website, and then an impact campaign. We will talk at the end of this little part of the program about it. That is a lot.
Yeah.
And but probably you have ruled out also many other things. I mean, do you have one example of where you thought, we thought it was a good idea, but we couldn't do it?
That's a good question. I don't know. There's many more things coming up, new ideas. So what did we rule out? Well, a lot of things changed along the way. So for example, the short docs, we knew we wanted to make follow-up films because the journey is just one part of their story. I mean, it's a horrible journey. For some of them, it takes 10 months, sometimes even 2 years. Eski was on the road for 2 years, leaving Afghanistan when he was 15. But of course, the journey is not where their life ends. So we wanted to tell the story, what happens next? What happens when they come to the country they arrive in? What are the challenges then? And first we thought we will make short videos, short online documentaries, maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes. But then it's like, no, it's a big story to tell as well. So we shifted that to making short docs, as in 25, 30 minutes, for example. And so you look at different platforms to distribute them. I think actually more things came along the way. Yeah, not less.
Do you also, you've built up quite a substantial community around it. Do you also listen to your audience and go with their ideas, or is that something, some things might suddenly become very successful or popular? Do you read into that, or are you continue to keep going, and because that needs a little bit of measurement or assessment about it?
Yeah, partly. Well, for example, one of the shorts we were making, we didn't plan on making it. It's about Mustafa. He's the kid from Iraq who was tortured, like really tortured by Croatian border guards. And so many people reacted to his story, and so many people emailed us or like sent us messages on social media. How is Mustafa? How is he doing? So we really felt we need to tell his story, because it's a very sad story also. When he, after 2 years being stuck in Bosnia-Herzegovina, he arrived in the Netherlands. But he's on the list to be deported back to Greece because he has fingerprints there. Yeah. So we felt there's so much, people asking, so many people are asking about him, we really should make this story. That's one example. Yeah. And then there's a lot of people who, tell us, I have an idea, can we work together? Or, like, for example, we were emailed by this amazing teacher from a high school. It's like an ISK, it's the Internationale Schakelklas. So it's the class where newcomers, like underage refugees, come to in the Netherlands to prepare them for the Dutch educational system. And she told us, she was really impressed by the film, and she said she talked about it with her students, a lot of them Eritreans, and they said, we want to make a story because nobody understands where we come from. Right. So now we're in the process of finding out, are we going to tell their story, which is really unique because especially it's girls. It's going to be a girls project. And if you go look for that, it's really difficult. It's a very close community, but they came to us. And now we're also finding out what medium should it be. Maybe we're going to make TikTok series. Yeah. Because they're all on TikTok.
5 years work, lots of different ways of storytelling. I said we talked about entrepreneurship. There's on the website, there's a lot of partnerships, funders. So while you make it, while you travel, you also have to finance it. Yeah. It seems that if we look at the website that it looks so easy, but it's probably not.
No, that's also a journey. You do that in phases. So, and also like the feature-length film, we did it with the production company Vidfilm. So they are amazing producers who helped us find also the financing. And then the other parts we financed through other funds. And we're still looking for funding. So, I mean, if you want to, we're still looking for funding for the adventure game, more for the impact campaign. So it's step by step. Yeah.
You call yourself very deliberately journalist. Yeah. And journalism is very much connected to can be connected to a certain way of working. But you call yourself a journalist, but you involve yourself, you listen to they are also part of it. Where do you draw the line? Because the influence, what they have and they bring to the table might influence this journalism. So storytelling, journalism, how do you match that up?
Well, for me, journalism is about really, going all the way to understand the situation and looking at it from different perspectives, talking to different people. That's the base, sort of the base for everything we do. So it could be, in the end, there's going to be an adventure game, but the basis is really thorough research, journalistic research. So I think that's the most important for me, why I call myself a journalist. It's about, investigating what is happening on the ground. Yeah. And then you can find different ways to tell the story. And of course, then film is an amazing medium to take people by the hand or on the journey and just, have this immersive experience of being on the road with these kids. Does that tell the whole story of what is going on in Europe? No. So then we have a different part that we did, is the investigative journalism part. Els, my co-director, actually started that. And she asked Lighthouse Reporters, which is an amazing investigative journalism collective here in the Netherlands, to join. And in the end, it was, I think, a collective of 8 or 9 different European countries that were involved. And Klaas van Dijken, he is this investigative journalist that actually went to Bosnia-Herzegovina on the border and just stayed in the bushes for a week with his telelens to actually find the proof that this is systematic, this violence. Yeah. So we had all the testimonies of the kids and we had all the information of different groups that we get our information from. And then in a different part of the project, we proved it in like investigative journalism part. Yeah.
An important part on the website is called impact. I think you have one more piece on impact. Maybe you can talk us through it.
Yeah, so also very short. Well, impact, I mean, can be anything, right? But for us, it's reaching an audience, of course, reaching the right audience. So you always ask the question, who do you want to see? And who do you want that sees the film, sees the project? Who do you want to become active also? So we create, of course, awareness. You can try to instigate a dialogue, activate people, and absolutely we try to bring change. I mean, with Shadow Game, that's quite obvious. We want to change in policies. With Shadow Game, I think we had 3 main goals. Raise awareness about the situation of refugee minors traveling through Europe. I mean, if you're so involved in the project, you can't imagine that people don't know, but people don't know. Really, I found out people don't know what is happening. We want to activate people to do something to help these young people. And we want to put the rights of these young refugees high on the international political agenda. So these are basically our main goals. And then, of course, you want to have a main message. And it's quite complicated because, of course, asylum policies, it's a really polarized, politicized topic. And I don't really want to go into a discussion. I mean, we can discuss for hours about the solutions, possible solutions. But what really is like the main thing we could all agree on, or we should all agree on, and for us it's protect children on the move. So that became our main message in the impact campaign.
Yeah. Wonderful, because I think the impact that you want to achieve at one point is most important. I like this committed and creative way of also achieving the goals. We could talk about this for the whole evening, but we also want to hear from Kadir. Thank you, Eefje, for this this part. Please be part of it.
I have a question.
Yeah, no, well, there you go. I saw you moving around on your seat, and I thought he has a question. Before I introduce you, Kadir van Lohuizen, please ask your question.
No, I mean, it's incredible. I knew about it, but seeing this, what all is there is just amazing. But I was wondering, because obviously we are today now 3 weeks in the war. We're witnessing the war with Ukraine, and obviously we see all the refugees coming. Same border. How do you feel about this?
Well, I get a, how do you say that? Like, I get a brain freeze about it. That was my first reaction. I mean, I'm really shocked, but what is happening in Ukraine? So that in the first place. And then, of course, it's just crazy, like at the Polish border especially, you know, we see people being welcomed, and at the other hand, on the other side of the same country, we still have people dying in the forest of Belarus, people being pushed back. So that's really difficult to deal with, I think. And at the same time, I feel like, you know, we should protect all children on the move. I mean, all people, but we focus on children. So in the end, that's the message we stick to. So that goes for Ukrainian kids traveling alone as well. But also, of course, the kids that are still stuck on our other borders. Yeah. But it's tough. I find it very difficult. And I see a lot of people who I work with, the kids, but also friends with a refugee background who are not white, they are really, really hurt. It's very painful. Yeah.
Kadir van Lohuizen, formerly known as photojournalist, photographer, maker, you just said it. I think you have many of these crafts in you. Winner of World Press Awards, always committed yourself, contributing to photography and photojournalism. There's so much more to say about you. Can you introduce yourself as Kadir van Lohuizen, who he is right now?
Well, he's just crawling out of a cave, a COVID case, cage. So, yeah, I mean, I always called myself a photographer, a photojournalist. You know, I still have a true love for the still camera. I still feel that the still image is still the most powerful thing that exists. That most of our visual memory is always connected to a still and not necessarily to a moving still or a moving image. But yeah, I mean, maybe different than Eefje, I kind of developed into maybe a multimedia or a visual storyteller, which was also partly to survive. I was always, I teach a lot, and I was always the one who said a photographer cannot shoot a film at the same time, or a photographer should not be involved in film at all, because it's a different medium, it's a different mindset, it's a different way of, you know, with a photograph you look for this very moment, and as a filmmaker you look for a sequence. So it was quite easy to defend always, because, you know, I mean, the video camera was a different equipment than the still camera, and then it came together in one camera.
When it came together for you was, well, some of the images in the back are of multiple stories and projects that you did, but for you that came together when you started working on Via Panam. Possibly the first multimedia production coming into this realm of the iPad was there, you had to make radio, suddenly you traveled, via Panam is traveling from the south tip of South America all the way up to Alaska, right?
It started a bit earlier, actually, because in 2001, I actually shot a documentary in the Arctic, in the Russian Arctic. So I always had a love for film. You know, my big influences were probably Ed van der Elske more as a filmmaker than as a photographer, and Johan van der Keuken as probably the first pioneer in multimedia, in real visual storytelling. So with Via Panam, yes, it kind of came together.
Yeah. What were your biggest challenges then? And are they maybe they're still your biggest challenges? Has that changed?
Well, you know, I mean, the Via Panam project, which was basically a project which is looking into contemporary migration in the Americas, it started as a very simple, classical photo project. You know, I wanted to travel overland from the tip of Latin America to the tip to the very north of Alaska. Would shoot black and white, which I would always do. But I figured that normally, you know, if I have enough savings, then I can finance a ticket and my stay somewhere, and then I sell it afterwards. In this case, I figured that that would probably take me a year and would not be possible. So, you know, it required funding. And I hate to write funding proposals, but sometimes it's a necessity. It comes with the job. And so I was pretty convinced that I would get it. And all the pitches I did to newspapers, magazines, all the funding proposals that I wrote, they were rejected. Actually, for the very same reasons as why I wanted to do this, because I wanted to tell a different story about migration. I wanted to tell a story about the normality of it. I wanted to tell it in a continent which is mostly inhabited by immigrants, migrants in Latin America and North America. And that was the reasons it was rejected. Why would we care about especially Latin America? And we know about migration, so what's new?
That was a very classical way of thinking, that in the newspaper or in the magazine we don't do this. But times have changed, mediums have changed.
Well, maybe if I would have proposed it in Europe, it would have been different. But in this case, it was, you know, I actually didn't want to tell the story, which you correctly because it became very stark that I wanted to show the normality. So there I was, I gave up, you know, I mean, and that's normally not what I do. So actually what happened was that I was having a beer with a guy there in the corner, which is Bas Vroege from Paradox, and I was complaining about that nobody understood me. and we were having a few beers, and then we were talking about this rumor from Apple that there would be a new device coming out. And we were talking about, if this is true, it would be maybe the first time that there would be kind of a device which organically could bring together photography, video, text, sounds. Yeah. The iPhone was out a couple of years ago. This device was coming, so we thought, well, we can build an app for this.
Did you ever imagine that it would go much more beyond that, this device? I mean, if you think about the channels or platforms that you now use the most, what would that be?
In what sense?
Television, newspapers, magazines. You still cover all of them, but yeah. iPad was at that point sort of a rumor. It became a reality, but it has moved much more beyond the iPad. So
it moved much more beyond the iPad, but the interesting thing was that it was also an attempt, I think, from us to see if it could be a new model to reach audiences directly, and not through the newspaper or the classical mainstream media. Mm. So that was a serious investigation, actually, if this was possible. If I would have known before what it would have entailed, because I I was not planning initially to shoot video, let alone to make a radio documentary or write 3 blogs a week or do all that. It was a very sharp learning curve. I don't think I will do it again, but I would have never wanted to have missed it.
Yeah. One of the things I spoke with Whitney about is that we still see, well, photographers resisting new ways of working. Whitney, do you still encounter that? I mean, I know that you do. We talked about it, but I was a little bit amazed by it. Do you still have photographers that still hold on to the still image primarily, right?
We do face that, but I think some of it has to do with actually the structure that we've created, you know, and as I'm listening to you two speak about your work, I'm actually quite jealous because of sort of the freedom that freelancers and independent production companies have to kind of, I mean, I listen to the two of you and you feel so creative, right? And in a way that sometimes within these large institutions can be quite hard to really be at the cutting edge of innovation. Because we're sort of trying to move a big organization from the processes that we've always done. And so here at National Geographic, there are still, I think, in many ways, the magazine is still held up as king, partially because there are still larger budgets that go to creating that content. And so until we sort of unwind that, and really continue to push our attention into the digital space, I can understand why people might prioritize the still, because the feeling even from the institution can sometimes be that the implication is that that still image is the most important.
Yeah, we will go when you talk later on from the first photo story into the most developed new applications. Kadir.
But I want to make one remark because, you know, I think in hindsight it was really great what we did with the Via Pan-Am, but what at that time was frustrating because we rewrote all the funding proposals and what the same institutions who rejected it before granted me the money.
Yeah.
So initially I was very frustrated because I thought, you see, I mean, but it was a good idea, but then why wasn't it funded before? And how is it possible that the packaging seems to be more important than the content?
Right.
I got over that.
You were a little bit too, you smile, so you're over it. That's good to see. Maybe you were a little bit too early. Could be. With Bas, you're very often at the forefront of things, and still are. After Via Pan-Am, you continued one of the projects that you worked on, Rising Tides, the Arctic, which was funded. We see an image in the back. Those projects were funded quite well, and most of them also ended up in a photo book. So you work on iPads, you work on many platform shapes, but for you the photo book is still something that is also a big part of your palette that you work on.
Well, I remember it was here that we gave a presentation when Via Pan-Am, when I was just back. And Bas and I spoke again, and I said, well, this is not going to be a book, you know. I mean, there's nothing richer than what we did. You know, the iPad contained everything. This can never happen in a book. So I was convinced that this would never be a book. And then I can't remember if it was Bas or someone else said, let's take a vote in the audience. Who thinks that this should be a book? And then almost everyone raised his hand or her hand. So then we started speaking about it, and I realized afterwards that an iPad, what we did was beautiful, but it's a dead thing, you know? I mean, it's sitting there on your table, but I would never pick it up and see and ask you what's in it, you know? And a book, when it's here, you would pick it up and you would smell it, and you would start from the beginning or from the end. Or I also learned that
I cursed you for it, and I think I was the only one voting against it. But I have the book. It's a beautiful book, Via Panem. I mean, go find it, and it's probably hard to find, but it is true. It encompassed everything that, and it's something that is there to stay. Then the project you made in the Arctic. That you did together with one of your fellow.
Can I say a few things about this? Because the story about actually, in the end, I worked on it on and off for 10 years. It's about the consequences of the rising sea level, and it came actually, like most of my stories, or I think that in general, I never get this idea today, and then I start working on it tomorrow. It always starts somewhere because I read something, and this actually started because of the Via Panem, because I came to these islands in the Caribbean where people were being evacuated because of a rising sea level. So it kind of automatically rolled over into a new project, and their film became a very crucial part of it. So I started, I have lots of recordings of ambient sound, people, video, so it became kind of part of me, where my still camera was part of me. Now sometimes I'm a bit like a Christmas tree, because I have to carry microphones and tripods, and usually on my own. But it became, and the Arctic came out of this.
Yeah, so it's a long line of, but most of it is committed to social issues, to environment. Has that always been something that you've been driven by? And the other question following up on this is the impact that you want to have with this. Yeah.
Well, I can only do my work, I can only do a story if I care for it. So I'm a pretty bad assignment photographer. If you give me, if you tell me what to do and I don't have a connection to the story, I'm usually not very good in delivering the best work. So it's not good to say that with National Geographic. Sometimes it's good.
It's also not very good for your business. But you're doing fine. So, but passion is part of what passion should be part of it.
Yeah, and obviously environmental stories, socially engaged stories, and stories related to the climate crisis became very important in my work.
Yeah. Does it? You tell the story. You reach a lot of people, and still you encounter very often that people don't know about it, or they don't, and sometimes maybe don't even care about it. How far does that go? Are you preaching? Do you want things to change, and are you persistent in it? Or do you also have at one point, I show it to you and you have to digest it, and then you'll have to see what you do with it yourself?
No, I do this work, and I do this work which you see now because I believe that we have to wake up. That I believe that we are so far in this climate crisis that the consequences we are facing, or at least the generation who's growing up now, is just incredible what they're gonna face. So in that sense, I see my work. I see it as visual proof as well. Yeah, and obviously we have this whole discussion again now with the war of Ukraine. We all saw that maybe you saw the Russian ambassador saying 1.5 weeks ago in Buitenhof that these pictures from Mariupol, she was an actress. Photography was always for me it is what you see, and that is under fire now. It's being discussed still. I don't manipulate my pictures. I don't stage. In that sense, I'm a true journalist.
Yeah, journalism matters.
Well, I think journalism does matter. It matters more than ever. And sometimes, and that often comes from, let's say, the right side of the political spectrum, that people say, aren't you more an activist than a journalist? Which is often meant as to disqualify you as a journalist. So
So,
active journalist.
yeah.
Journalist, activist, active journalist. Final question.
I mean, like Eefje, you know, I mean, I'm allowed to have an opinion, you know. I mean, I don't have to tell you what to think, so I'll present you my work, and you judge and you make it up.
Yeah.
What you make up your mind.
Yeah.
But I agree, like, we also get this question a lot. Like, aren't you more like activists now than filmmakers or than journalists? I'm like, well, if it's that we want to activate people to do something, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll bear that with pride.
Yeah.
But I'll still show the, you know, multi-perspective, takes on the story.
Yeah.
It's not propaganda.
Not propaganda, journalism, storytelling. Kadir, before we move to Whitney Johnson online, it even got you now to be a television presenter. Was that something that you dreamed of when you were a little boy?
I think so.
Yeah, well, I wanted to win a song contest, but I became it. No, it was not my dream. And yeah, maybe some of you saw I did this television series called Na Ons de Zondvloed, which came out of this this story. No, I mean, I didn't. It happened before I kind of realized that I was, because it's great to be behind the camera and not in front of the camera. But it made sense that I was the one who took you on the journey, and I was the one who was witnessing it, and that I would tell the story.
Yeah. Do you
still, I would. Well, it was okay. I mean, it's weird that that doesn't happen anymore. But if you walk in the street, that all the people start making comments.
Yeah.
Most of the time, positive comments, but I would still rather be behind the camera.
All right. Both, we like to see you both behind and before the camera. Thank you for so far. Whitney Johnson, I introduced you with your long job title, but one of the most important things that is in it is visual storytelling, visuals. Can you give us a little bit of insight in where did you start? The question that is always asked, always with me, are you a photographer yourself? Yeah, so I'm gonna ask you as well, how did you end up in visuals?
No, I am not a photographer myself. I did take photography way back in high school, but that was a short-lived sort of effort. But I studied literature and I studied art history. So I always sort of thought of myself as interested in storytelling and the arts. And I actually got my start at the Open Society Foundation in New York, and I was working in the communications department, and I was approached by a woman who wanted some help, who was organizing a photo exhibition at Open Society Foundations and needed some help from a resident writer to help edit the artist statements of the photographers, which needed a little help. And that woman happened to be Susan Meiselas, and she took me under her wing and taught me how to look at photography and talk about photography, and is really the reason that I'm in the job that I'm in now. And actually, Kadir is one of the first photographers who I ever met. And so he and many others that I met at that time really set the bar quite high in terms of what I expect of a photographer, in terms of, you know, having that connection to the issues and the stories that they're telling, having that passion, doing that research. I came to think that that was just the definition of a photographer, and learned later that not everyone performs to that level, but that was certainly my entry point into the field.
To give a little bit of insight, what you are leading, the audience that National Geographic has, it used to be this wonderful magazine with this yellow square, but nowadays it's many channels. The biggest one probably Instagram. How many followers are you today?
Oh gosh, I haven't checked the numbers today. It's probably around 207 million followers.
Wow.
You know, we're up there usually competing with the Kardashians. And it was interesting that you mentioned TikTok, because that has been our most recent foray into social media. And it's been pretty amazing to watch an audience that, you know, you might not expect to be interested in some of the issues that we're covering, to suddenly have 18 million people watching a video on TikTok. You know, what more do you want as a journalist but to have your stories actually seen and heard by people? So I think those are pretty amazing platforms.
Yeah. Are you still involved with also the stories that are printed on paper?
Yes, we still print the magazine. And as you can see from behind me, I still actually really appreciate still photographs as well.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at the first photo story ever published in the magazine. Is that true?
Yeah.
I saw a presentation of you once, and it was a shocking thing to have photos in the magazine, which is now completely driven by imagery. Can you talk us quickly through the set of photos?
Yeah, so this image, which I look at now and think is like a pretty unspectacular picture, is actually an island in Russia and was the very first photograph ever published in National Geographic, which was published in 1904. We were founded as a magazine in 1890, so we actually had quite a few years there where we had no photographs. And then shortly after, if you go to the next slide, you'll see a run here of several images from Tibet, which were actually this was the very first photo essay ever published in National Geographic. It was 11 full pages of photographs. And in this case, the editor, Gil Grosvenor, decided he had an empty space in the magazine and he quickly needed to fill the pages, and he had these photographs and he put them in, and he had the captions, the text actually written to the photographs instead of the other way around, which was historically what had happened. And he was worried before publishing that he might lose his job over this because it was considered scandalous and might sort of bring down the intellectual quality of the publication. But in fact, it was a runaway hit. And shortly thereafter, we started publishing, we dedicated an entire issue to natural history photography. And I guess you can say the rest is history.
Yeah. If we make a huge jump from this, then I have noted it down, all these new storytelling technologies, media, virtual reality, augmented reality, social media, that one I think we all know. All these things are constantly going, and we are watching here also in the venue some of these imagery, which is I think if you put on a goggles, then you immerse yourself in the water with an elephant. Are you ever surprised and amazed by the amount of technology that you have to use now?
Am I surprised? No, I mean, the reason that I went back to that very first photo essay is because I like to imagine what it might have actually been like for a reader in 1905 to open their publication of National Geographic and see photographs of a place that they'd never seen before, maybe they never heard of, and that must have actually been a pretty immersive experience, right? But if you fast forward 115, 117 years, opening a magazine is no longer truly an immersive experience because of all the technology that we have at our fingertips. So from my perspective, from where I sit, all of these technologies are just, future steps, current steps in journalism and better storytelling. And, just like the magazine used to be delivered to many millions of people who would get it on their doorstep, now I feel like we need to meet our audience where they're at. And if they're in headset, I want to be right there alongside whatever they're watching on Netflix. I want to make sure that National Geographic is delivering our content also in that space. So I'm not surprised. It can be, in fact, it's just, it's pretty exciting to think about the possibility of storytelling in that way.
Yeah. You have a large group of people that work with you on this. What is the number? It might fluctuate every once in a while, but how big is the staff working on all these platforms and technologies?
We have a pretty big team. It's around 40 people that are working on the print magazine, the content across all of our digital outlets, which is everything from social media, TikTok and Instagram. What you're looking at here are a couple of AR filters that we did on Instagram. And all of our VR technology as well. Oh, and podcasts also. So we're also in the audio space too.
Yeah. We talked about the lockdown and people not being able to move around. And then this was an excellent way, of course, taking them on this journey. And also about we can't have 40 million people going to Machu Picchu anymore, even though we probably all want to. But you said, yeah, we have ways of getting them there. Right? We see some of the images now. These are illustrations, but it shows the possibilities that are there.
Yeah, these are concept sketches for projects that we have in the works. This one is in the Amazon, and this one is sort of an experience through time in the oceans. And yeah, I mean, I think about the opportunity that we have to actually, you know, in some ways it does matter in terms of the environment and climate change and protecting the fragile landscapes. And if we can make sure that not 40 million people or even hundreds of thousands of people are traveling to certain destinations, I think that's a plus. But I also think it's a much more inclusive approach to storytelling too. Like you said, I may never go to Machu Picchu for economic reasons, for health reasons. So if I can meet there in the social space of virtual reality, and I can meet my father there, and we can go to Machu Picchu together, there's advantages to that. I think that's only a positive thing in terms of our storytelling.
Yeah. One of the things that is now coming up is the metaverse, which has been claimed by Meta, formerly known as Facebook. You coined this wonderful phrase, next generation of visual storytelling. You do have, while we also see some of the imageries that are about Machu Picchu, you talked about going beyond the metaverse and this next generation. I mean, where does this end? Are there any boundaries?
I mean, we've been talking a lot. If I had a small sum of money for every time we talked about the metaverse in the last 3 months here at Disney and National Geographic, I feel like I'd be fairly wealthy. We have been talking a lot about this space. I think that we have particularly good, we have the type of content that I think is also plays very well in a very immersive environment in terms of issues around natural history and exploration. But of course, since we met in February and I gave that talk, we have actually, Disney decided to stop talking about the metaverse and, as you say, call it next generation storytelling. I mean, to me, it's just the next leap forward, right? If you think about Web 1.0 as when we would sit in front of our computer and we'd be very, very tethered to the internet, and we would sort of visit in blocks of time. And then with the invention of the iPhones, we were able to move to Web 2.0, where we're really interacting all the time with the internet. Web 3.0 is just a space where we can kind of fully inhabit it. And we've already made such inroads into that space through VR technology, AR technology. The metaverse is not really a scary term. It's just kind of putting all of that together. And I think what the pandemic has showed, right, is that there's a need for us to socialize in the virtual space, right? I'm here with you guys in a way that we might not have done it exactly this way, you know, just 2 years ago. So I think that there's definitely been, I think that has accelerated how we think about the metaverse, certainly coming out of the pandemic.
We have one little clip that we can show with some sound, where one of the productions that you did on the metaverse with the photographer Aaron Huey. Maybe we can put that on the screen.
Help! Help! Just kidding, I can actually stand right here. It's actually not so deep. My name's Aaron Huey. I'm on assignment for National Geographic magazine in the metaverse. And I'm gonna go do some underwater photography here. And oh my God, right behind me, this is what we've been waiting for. This family of turtles has been around. Here we go. I've been living in this pod for about a month and a half, and I'm getting to see some pretty incredible things down here. This one's been letting me get really close to him. Help! Help! Just kidding, I can act.
So that was just a case where we literally were thinking about how do we help people understand what the metaverse is, and wanted to send our photographer on assignment in that space. You know, I think it's a little bit, there's a little bit of dissonance in that clip for National Geographic, because of course that's a fictionalized space. And for me, as I think about our future and next generation storytelling and the metaverse, it's not really only about those fictionalized spaces. It's actually, you know, bringing the journalism that all of us feel is critical for society, and just sharing it in a different space. So, what you saw, for instance, with the elephant, that is, 3 weeks worth of footage covered traveling down the Okavango. What you saw with Machu Picchu, that is all actually filmed photogrammetry at Machu Picchu. So, don't worry, National Geographic is still absolutely committed to journalism and the real world, even as we do enter the metaverse.
Well, thank you, Whitney. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us still online. We have to end the online version of this program. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back. We will continue here in this audience, and thank you very much. That were the